I belong to the band.
Hello and welcome to week 27 of Technolotics, your weekly guide to all that is new in technology, politics, the media, and the odds and ends that make up our world of news. This week's show is brought to you by no sponsorship whatsoever.
Yes, and no production values.
And absolutely none. And our first story is how easy to kill you all. This story focuses on the efforts of journalist Paul, I'm trying to pronounce it, Butin, to produce a bioweapon. No, he is not an evil nemesis. He is instead an investigative reporter tasked with discovering just how easy it would be to kill you all. All of you. Not some of you, but all. So Paul Butin, what did he do? He tried to order a bioweapon over the internet. Clearly you can't go to bioweapon.com.
Darn it!
But you can assemble the parts. You can buy the DNA, you can buy the gene sequencers that you'll need, and the amino acids to produce an evil bioweapon, like for example smallpox or the HIV. Dreaded HIV. So eventually, what happened? Well, largely he failed. He required extra help to produce this virus. And consulting with various genetics experts, including Raja Brent, a geneticist who runs a California biotech firm, who reckons that a bioweapon produced by terrorists is a bigger danger than a nuclear weapon, he's established that right now it's probably just about above the abilities of a lab tech and evil hired help to produce a bioweapon. But in the very near future, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, and for a long period of time after that, until the collapse of civilization due to a bioweapon, it will be cheap and easy to produce a massive weapon of doom. What is to be done? Well, Paul Butin has a recommendation. Well, it's not really a recommendation, but it's something, an idea. And the idea is this: a general purpose virus detector and destroyer. A virus that itself creeps around the world, somehow immutable to mutation, and kills all disease!
Dead! Until it is the disease.
And then we're all
And everyone's sick of living.
I think that was an episode of Star Trek, wasn't it? They made these children that killed all disease with their powerful immune systems. But then they killed normal people with their immune systems? No! Not good. So, such a device, such a serum could cure any plague, and would no doubt be excellent at curing plagues like the common cold, malaria, or even the dreaded HIV. One day we may see it in our lifetimes, or not. It may end us all. Fear the bioweapon.
Fear its power.
Moving on.
I don't know, I found it kind of interesting though, but he talks about bioweapons, but... Is he talking about bioweapons? Bioweapons? Well, what's the weapon? Anyway, he seemed to be talking about, like, ones based on bacteria rather than viruses, because we know that we're going to talk about viruses later on in the show, but we know from traditionally that the successes of medical science against viruses are zero, none, nothing. There are no cures or successful treatments for viruses, including the common cold, except go to bed and have plenty of chicken soup.
Sure, and antivirals are amongst the most advanced medications out there. I mean, even things as simple as herpes, which affects the groinal regions of people who've been unfortunate enough to contract it. I've never seen your groin, and you've never seen mine.
Thank God.
So let's establish that there's no way you could know that. How did we know? Even that can only be treated. A terrible but common disorder can only be treated with the most advanced of antivirals, only developed to treat HIV and other retroviruses. So these are really hard things to defeat. So a viral enemy, an attack with a polymorphic virus, could potentially be even more devastating.
Yeah, I think so. And what he was saying was, like, at the moment it would take a couple million to build this, between buying all the equipment and getting all the gene sequences and just generally putting in the time and getting the staff that actually know what they're doing to do this, but it's not beyond well-funded terrorist organisation or someone who's working in a lab which is well-funded.
Like Spectre.
Yes, Spectre. Spectre. Anyways, before they thought that only governments could actually do this, so it's kind of shifting more towards the individual or the cracknut group.
Cracknut group?
Cracknut group. Everyone should eat cracknuts and we'll kill you all. Unless you do. Anyway, the scary thing he said was that it's kind of following Moore's law, except even faster. The faster and easier it gets, the faster and easier it gets.
To kill you all!
To kill you all! So, it's scary. Methinks.
I'm hiding under the covers tonight.
Oh yeah, I'm buying a gas mask in the morning. Definitely. And I'm going to live like Howard Hughes.
With long nails.
In the big tissue box. Scared of germs. Germs! They're out to get me. Ah!
And him. So moving on.
Moving on.
Swiftly
Moving on. Next story is titled The Right to Dissent. The editor of the Danish magazine called I can't pronounce it. Jyllands-Posten, which infamously had those cartoons of Muhammad. He's spoken out in the last week and he has explained why they appeared and why he commissioned them to appear in the magazine. So, his response was that the cartoons were in response to several incidents of self-censorship in Europe caused by widening fears and feeling of intimidation in dealing with issues related to Islam. So, essentially what he was saying was, everyone's afraid to say anything bad about anyone who's a Muslim, or even it's taboo, essentially, to say anything slightly negative, or that could be construed as negative about them, no matter what they do. And essentially, I think what he saw was that people were treating them extremely specially, because he also said that their magazine has shown cartoons depicting Jesus on the cross having dollar notes in his eyes and another with the Star of David attached to a bomb fuse. And none of those, while obviously they would be quite controversial and would offend many, none of those cartoons actually caused the outrage and general violence and demonstrations that accompanied the ones that were depicting Muhammad. So what they wanted to do was actually start a debate on actually integrating new religions and just having an open debate about Islam and new religions coming into a secular society and how to integrate everybody. And it wasn't so much an attack on Muhammad and Islam as on some people who actually hijack Islam for their own needs, their own violent needs. In particular, he mentioned the cartoon which depicted Muhammad with a bomb as a turban, and his explanation for it was that in some ways it depicted the way that Islam has been hijacked by others for violent means, so taking it away from those who actually, it's many people say that it's a religion of peace. I think Islam, does it mean peace or something like that? I wouldn't know, but anyway, many people say that it's a religion of peace and these people are hijacking it and they're actually giving it a bad name. So what he said was that in some ways it was a success because it's actually provoked a debate and many people have actually stood up for the freedom of speech, and many moderate Muslims in Denmark have come forward and basically let their views be known, and the moderate Muslims, which far outnumber the radicals, have come out and actually supported free speech versus those who've actually said, burn them to the ground, let's kill them all. And while that has been good, it's brought those people into the national debate and they're interacting with others. You also have in the Middle East people burning flags, violent demonstrations, people have died, and people in the magazine are actually in hiding. So that's, there's good and there's bad. So he said there's possibly two debates going on. There's one in Europe where it is actually, Europe is becoming more, there are more and more people of the Islamic faith in Europe, and as Europe expands, particularly if Turkey ever joins. Turkey's a largely Muslim state, so we are going to have to get used to people with a whole new religion and learn to integrate together, both for those who are coming into our European nation, what do you want to call it, and for us, to get used to them. So, the Middle East is a whole different area. Let's not go there. Messed up.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go
to the Middle East. No.
Let's not go there. It's fun. But I think it's interesting. There's been a lot of furore about this, and I've actually seen the cartoons, and I didn't laugh anyway. First of all,
well, they're really much less. You hear all this furore as you described it about them, and you see them, and you think, well, obviously we're not Islamic,
Yeah.
But you think not only are they not offensive, but they're not even. They're really poor cartoons. And he gave them, I think, to 12 different artists.
Yes, he commissioned 25, and 12 came back.
Yeah, to produce their own interpretation of kind of Islam in the modern age, or Islam in the media, and they're really, they're pretty poorly done cartoons for a start. But they're not anywhere near as extreme as you might imagine from the media reports. So they're quite. There is one with the bomb and the turban. I think there's one other that could be construed as quite offensive. The rest are really quite tame.
Yes, and the thing is that many people were saying that any depiction of Muhammad was basically blasphemy against Islam. However, I think traditionally in certain countries, or certainly in the past, actually, in Muslim homes, there were depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. So that's totally false. So it's not blasphemous to show Muhammad because it was done in the past. So by Muslims who showed pieces of the Quran or depictions of Muhammad doing certain things, much like a Christian house might have a crucifix on the wall. So that's a load of crap saying that any depiction of Muhammad is wrong. Now, it's provoked debate, and certainly that's a good thing.
I think the editor who wrote this, I think it's Elon's Postum, the magazine, the editor who wrote this article, he made one really excellent point, which was that the religious people who demand that we observe their taboos in private are perfectly reasonable, but those who demand that we observe their taboos in public demand not our respect but our submission. I think that's an excellent point. You do have to respect people's opinions when you go to their country, or you go to their mosque, or you go to their temple or their church.
Yes.
And you have to respect the rules of those institutions in those countries. But in your own public realm, you should be free to speak and to behave according to the rules.
Yes.
And kind of permissions of your society. So it's a very interesting debate. It's brought up, and a very interesting reaction, frightening reaction, really.
It's interesting because he also mentioned that one argument was like, you can't put these up because they will insult someone, but if you were always worried about insulting someone, you would never actually publish anything, because somebody somewhere is bound to be offended by it, no matter what it is. Even if it's only like a pub review or a review of the film, obviously if you say it's rubbish, the guy who made it will be offended, so you can't win. So I think people should have freedom of speech.
It's like those throw ring games in the circus. You think you can get it over the stand and get that kind of coke? You can't win.
You can't.
It's a rigged game.
It's rigged. You cannot win.
Okay, we should probably fly on.
Fly on.
Taking too much time.
Unintelligent Design. So, quickly did all life evolve from viruses? Now, we mentioned viruses earlier. And they're scary, because you get a virus, you're going to get sick and maybe die. Mwah. So, they've always been looked down upon, as everyone thinks virus bad. Their actual name comes from the Latin word for poisonous slime. Little tidbit for you. So, they're seen as evolutionary latecomers because viruses traditionally, they need some other host to live on. So, they infect your body and they start infecting your cells, and that's how they spread, and you cough and it spreads to other people. So traditionally people thought, alright, viruses need someone to live off, so in some ways they're like a parasite. So obviously other life forms would have to develop first for viruses to survive, which seemed to be a fair enough argument. However, the sheer number of new viruses being discovered daily, which is literally in the millions. One guy was travelling around the world, and he was literally every couple of 100 miles he'd dip into the ocean, pull out a glass of water, and it'd be like full of millions and millions of new viruses. Yummy. So obviously there are millions of viruses in the world, so obviously they can't be all making us sick or we'd all be dead. Long ago.
Are we dead?
Are we dead? Maybe we're doing this from beyond the grave. Maybe this is all a dream.
Ooh. Well, we could die when you're between having made this and when you're watching.
Ooh.
Yeah, Schrodinger's death. No, it's nothing like that at all.
Anyway, okay, so let me see. Okay, so the discovery of a new virus called Mimi virus, because it mimics a bacterium, is so complex. The London Telegraph described it as unlike anything else seen by scientists, that it could qualify for a new domain in the tree of life. So it's like completely alien. It gets its own little separate area. So Mimi virus is so complex that it's miles more complex than any virus they've ever seen before. It could almost qualify as an organism on its own. Freudian slip. I apologise. Anyway, what this virus indicates because of its complexity was that it had an ancient ancestor, and this could have been around when life first emerged on Earth. So this is like a really big idea that viruses actually, first of all, are prevalent throughout the world and might be very much integral to life on this planet. And secondly, they might have been there right at the very start when life was first emerging, and they might have played yet again another important part. So suddenly this idea of the virus being this bad thing that you catch and you get sick and you get ill and you die maybe, it's being reversed, or at least it's becoming more broad that maybe also viruses are important to life. Well, I think it's pretty cool.
It's
definitely
very interesting.
It's very interesting, and viruses are very little is known about them, to be honest. They're kind of, they straddle the line between organism and just being kind of a chemical, because they act almost like an animal, but they're just a strand of DNA.
It's like a girl I once dated who straddled the line between a girl and a boy.
Dressed like a girl and sounded like a boy. Hello, Gareth. How are you? You're sexy.
No. But she was the best lover I've ever had. God damn it. So yeah, they're kind of interesting quasi-alive sort of things, but perhaps the building blocks of our very lives.
I think so. It's a bit mad. No.
It makes you wonder whether living in that Kleenex box is a good idea after all, because maybe the viruses are our friends.
Are our friends?
Or at least our grandparents.
You're related. An uncle.
Our
long
cousins.
lost uncle.
Because they're the descendants of our grandparents. So they're our cousin.
True. True.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Hello.
Hello, little guys. How are you on?
Okay.
Yum.
So quickly moving on to our next one. This is a story from clippers.com, a company who have a bright idea, and that idea is to bring you a solution to the terrible problem of comment spam. If you've ever had a blog or even commented on one, you'll probably have noticed that spam on blogs and wikis, etc., is becoming a growing problem. How to solve this problem? How can we solve the spam? Well, they have a suggested solution. And it is thus. Essentially, a system of identity brokers. Merchants competing with each other. Each of whom will preserve your identity in a box-like device.
Yes.
At the end of their
in
internet
a mythical
world
land
of identity. So when you go to comment on a blog, you'll go, ooh, I need a little code for this. You'll run off to your identity merchant through a bookmarklet or some other piece of code, get a little code, enter it in, then the blog will check with this identity merchant and come running back and go, okay, well, this person is trusted. Then based on your comment, they can then communicate back, well, he's not a very good boy, or he's fine, and your reputation will increase. And so blogs will communicate with identity merchants will communicate with clients, and the world will be a happy, shiny place, free of spam. But there are flaws in this perfect system. Almost like a glassy world which at first seems perfect, but hides a terrible secret. Like that ex-girlfriend I mentioned. So, This system requires a trusted identity merchant, and who would you trust? The companies most likely to bring you an online identity secured in one area with a huge infrastructure required to support it. Companies like eBay, Google, perhaps even Yahoo. They're companies you trust with your email, yes. But do you trust them with your identity?
And your reputation.
And your reputation.
Your online reputation. Because that can mean a lot to people.
And if a system like this is implemented, it'll mean even more. It's interesting, actually. Cory Doctorow once wrote in his first novel about a reputation system which governed people's very lives and went on to replace currency. And these could be seen as the very first steps in establishing this. But, again, problems. Whom do you trust? This is open to all sorts of abuse, from smear campaigns designed to decrease the reputation of someone so their voice can't be heard, to identity theft through simply stealing one login, which will then enable you to comment in a trusted way all over the web. It's open to nets of blogs which are designed purely to kind of create spam or to create misleading messages and interpretations, gaining reputations and increasing each other's reputations. It's not going to be free. A system like this will be hugely expensive to administer, especially because it'll require spot checks on messages, it'll require chasing up people who fake their identity, it'll require real-world documentation and proof of who you are in the real world, and someone to actually go out and get that documentation and compare it to your online identity. So it's going to be something they'll have to charge for, which means that kids and teenagers won't be able to use it, people in the third and developing world won't be able to use it, and it certainly won't be free for anybody. So it's going to monetize blog comments. Not everyone's going to want that, which means there'll be a split. Also, identity merchants would have to communicate with each other transparently. It might be in their interest to do so, but currently very few private organisations, especially on the web, do that sort of communication. And you can argue that email is that sort of communication, but email didn't evolve as a standard that a few companies threw around. It was a standard which was developed and designed in academia and in the military and ARPANET, and DARPANET, as it once was or now is, I forget which. But it's a system which was developed specifically.
DARPA runs. DARPA's the group.
Yeah, but DARPA and ARPANET. Ah, okay.
DARPA are like the defence area
and ARPA
research.
is the computation.
Yeah, ARPANET was the origin of the internet. DARPA still exists. The ARPANET is gone.
DARPA, the guys who do the cool challenge where they race all the boogies across the...
Yes. They put tons of
crash
money
into
into
walls
the
and
US. It's like, it's good to be a researcher in the US because you get lots of money off DARPA.
And for those of you in the know, that's called Keynesian pump priming. It's the reason why the US has such a great economy, because they spend money on it. Socialism is another term for it, but let's not go into that. Okay, so do you trust these identity merchants? You know, the market, as you pointed out, for second-hand or fake identities, huge.
Yeah.
I mean, how easy is it to get a fake passport? And that's in the real world, where you need a concrete thing and you're actually checked at every passport, at every bridge even between countries. If you go to an online border, as it were, with this identity, there's no check of who you are. The only check is who you were when you establish the identity. That's a system which is a very, very large point of failure. So I think that this whole idea is a house of cards. It's really...
I think it's dodge, simply because like someone can pull away your reputation in one foul swoop. If someone in the company in charge of your identity just goes, I don't like it, and just boop, or just deletes it one day, you're like, no, you're back to zero, nothing. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing getting banned from Google or whatever, but it's a whole other thing getting banned from your reputation, especially as online identity becomes more and more important.
Yeah, it becomes more and more important, and it becomes like part of who you are. It certainly can be a big deal, because you're like, it's your online representation. So I mean, suddenly it's like, oh, they're not hanging out with him. Look at his reputation points.
That's not even getting into the whole issue of anonymity online. We all have this thing, like this kind of relative anonymity online, where we register with Google under a false name, or we go into BugMeNot and use it to read some website that doesn't allow us to read it without registration. But this sort of anonymity will completely disappear under this kind of a system. Everything will be linked, and you get true online monitoring, which is actually very, very dangerous for civil liberties. Also, imagine if you comment on a blog, which is, say, it's a very strong anti-abortion blog, and you make a reasoned pro-choice comment, for example, contentious issue. They can easily mark you down based not on the spam content of your comment, but on disagreeing with you.
The point that you simply disagree with them. So I mean, and plus these people in blogs have, how much control do they have on your reputation? Because you submit a post to them, and then they give it's very fuzzy. They just say they give feedback, and then the company that holds your reputation essentially somehow judges whether to increase it or decrease it. So it's all very fuzzy in who has really the say to. Can they just go, is it arbitrary? How the heck do they work out, oh, we should increase it by 5 points or decrease it? Is it just based on the blog going, right, this was a load of crap, he spammed us. He just disagreed us, but we're going to call it spam. So, minus him 20 points, and it's like...
You can get the horrible Slashdot editorial effect. Slashdot has this kind of historical problem, where if you post a story, which is a very interesting story, or you post a comment which is very valid, but it disagrees with certain of the opinions held by the Slashdot community, and more importantly the Slashdot editors, the story will never merge, or the comment will get marked down. So even if you're making a very good point, as long as the blog has a good reputation with the identity merchants, they can mark you down and it won't be fair.
Yeah.
So, moving on.
I think, yeah.
I think
it's open to abuse.
Pursue that one. Open to abuse.
Open to abuse.
Like an altar boy on holidays in Ireland. Okay. Ricky Gervais is to start charging for his podcast. The historical move will make essentially the world's most popular podcast the first podcast to become monetized. Now there are downloadable radio shows and so on that you can pay for. I think Rush Limbaugh, of all people, has one. Who wouldn't pay for Rush's words of wisdom? But Gervais' show has had literally, I think it's almost 500,000 downloads or more.
It's I think it's average of about 250,000 per show.
Per show.
And about, the last one I heard anyway, they said it was like 4.5 million downloads.
So just slightly above what we get in terms of
just
daily downloads. This is an enormously popular podcast, of course, syndicated by RSS, using all these open technologies to cheaply, or at least more cheaply, spread information. But this is kind of going against the entire thought behind podcasting. Ricky Gervais is going to charge for his podcast. So for $7 a month, you can get his podcast from audible.com or through iTunes, which is a partner of Audible. Audible have a subscription service, but paying for the podcast isn't the only sort of downer, because fair enough, he wants to charge and make money from his podcast. We just on some levels,
because he is so poor, isn't he?
Well, he is so
poor. Yeah.
But then again, at the moment he's getting it hosted for free by The Guardian. So there are charges which ensue from podcasting, very big ones if you've got this sort of popularity.
Yeah, if it's that popular, true.
But here's the big problems. Okay, Audible.com use digital rights management, DRM, as is otherwise known, DRM hell, which can ensue, and these files have some serious restrictions on them. So if you're thinking about purchasing Ricky Gervais' podcast, you might want to think about this. Audible files may no longer work once you've cancelled your account. So sometimes if you want to move your Audible files onto another media, or onto even periodically you want to play your file or put it onto your iPod, it'll ask you for your current Audible account, and then check with audible.com. If you've cancelled your account, the music that or podcast that you paid for, it's vapor.
It's gone.
If your computer dies, you're no longer able to play your purchased files. And apparently Audible have had some serious problems with people purchasing. Bloggers, and Dave Winner is one, the internet pioneer who created, I think, spreadsheets, and was interviewed on Robert Cringely's interesting and I think very, very interesting show, Nerd TV. Had an enormous problem where he purchased an Audible account, his computer died, he lost all his music, and he wasn't able, as an ordinary citizen, to get it back. Now he could have just phoned up the Audible CAO or COO and said,
strings,
please fix it for me. But he didn't. He blogged about it, and he got some nasty sort of hate messages from the Audible management as a result. Audible files can only burn to a CD once. So you burn to a CD, your CD breaks, you're screwed. You want to back up your files, or for example, you want to burn a compendium of stuff on just a cheap CD to go to work with because you don't have an iPod, you use a CD player or whatever. You do that, you throw away the CD, you lose the CD, you want to burn it in a different compendium, you can't. Audible files cannot be used on any MP3 players other than the iPod, so it's again locking you into that Apple monopoly of DRM and iPods. And as we all know, iPods have had some serious software issues in the past, and people have had some horrible experiences with them, myself included.
Yeah, you're locked into one device, which is just ridiculous.
Absolutely. It goes against, it's no longer podcasting, it's paycasting.
Yeah.
And
it's Apple eye casting.
Eye casting, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Steve I. Jobs with his eye casting.
And as with Google, I mean, Apple are a company, they do a lot of great things, but companies are no longer, especially corporations, especially American corporations, because the way corporation law is set up in America, they're no longer individuals. As the book The Corporation points out, and the documentary which was made based on it, corporations frequently behave as if they were psychotic. If they were an individual, they would be seen as psychotic. They're purely there to make profit. That's all they exist for.
Yeah.
And eventually, no matter what artistic integrity is there at the start, all corporations become profit-making machines. So whatever you feel about Apple or for example Google, this is not a lovely, soft, warm overlord.
Yeah.
It's a company that will take as much.
It's not a benign dictatorship that's coming,
but it is a dictatorship.
It's definitely a dictatorship.
And that's what digital rights management produces. It produces a dictatorship from which open source, future technologies and competitors are excluded.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crush them, knock them out of the way. I think this is finding a little bit ridiculous that Ricky Gervais was like, oh yeah, we're doing this podcasting thing, and then then it's like, money, look who's downloading this, we could be making serious money, because he actually said it in one of the shows. It's like, man, we could be making so much money, and it's like, ding, you could hear the light bulb go off at that very second.
But here's the interesting thing. People will rush out and get Ricky Gervais's pay for Audible accounts and so on, and I think, as he's assuming, he might get 10%, 5% or even 1% of his current downloads, but that's still a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
But once they encounter these sort of DRM restrictions, they're going to get very, very annoyed, and this will be the first time that most people have come up against real DRM problems. Most people can, even the most technically literate person, can region free their DVD player, but this is a problem that's going to be a lot more complicated to get around. Although if you download a piece of software called Goldwave from goldwave.com, supposedly it might help you to back up your DRM'd Audible stuff. We haven't tried it, we can't say. But
we wouldn't do such things.
We would never violate Digital Millennium Copyright Act or any other onerous copyright legislation which was introduced without people really understanding it.
Yeah, allegedly this is what it does. Allegedly.
But so people will be banging their head up against this, and hopefully it could be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely... People are going to get a nasty shock at some stage with their iPods and their iTunes when they go, maybe it'll take a couple of years when like their laptops die that they have at the moment, and suddenly their music disappears or something like that, and they're like, Apple, can I have my music back? I paid for it like 2 years ago, and they go, but you can pay us like 20 quid now for that, like, because you know, we've killed the competition, so you can only buy it off us. Ha 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 ha. And it'll be like, Steve I. Jobs.
Pixar to Disney.
You're laughing now, aren't you? Ha!
Moving on. To is this our final story? Our final story.
It's just a quickie. Out of control, the new biology of machines, social systems, and the economic world. It is Kevin Kelly's 11-year-old masterpiece, and it's free to read online. So, if you want to read about emergent biological properties of complex systems, and the argument that biological and machine life are converging, then this is the thing for you. So it's all tech, the future. Where is it all going? Maybe not so much, and more like, the machines are taking over. We are the machines.
We've become the machines.
I am a machine.
So if you're interested in accelerating change, biotechnology, any of these really, really interesting cutting edge areas, this book, while a little out of date, is still a fascinating read, and it comes from the former editor of Wired magazine, Kevin Kelly. So you can read it online or download it and check it out. It's linked from our wiki, as are all stories this week. It's free. It's an e-free meek. And there's also some additional stories that we just didn't have time to cover this week, which are again linked from our wiki. The Japanese law, which might make it illegal for you to buy second-hand product.
Or sell. Is it sell?
Sell and buy.
Sell and buy.
More sell, but you can't buy them if no one can sell them. And some other story.
Yeah, something else.
Oh, this has been a rush show. But moving on to our media pimp.
You go.
They don't. They used to say that about Yugo cards back in the day. But anyway. Exposé for Windows. If you've cried yourself to sleep wishing you had this fantastic feature of, oh, look at all the windows and little windows. Now you can. There are a variety of tools to allow you to have expose-like features in Windows. One free tool is, I think it's IE or IEX, linked again from our wiki, and a lot of paid tools linked from that blog post as well. And this is something I love. If you love the look and feel of Mac OS X, but not the price or the incompatibility with almost every software created, then you can download Object Dock free from stardock.com and create a little dock just like Mac OS. You can suppress the start bar and you can really make your PC start to look a lot like Mac OS, and it runs really well. I'm running it for a couple of days, no major problems. A little bit of setup hassle getting all the nice shiny big icons to swell and shrink and swell and shrink, but top software, so check that out. Francis.
My Pimp this week includes the new trailer for Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly. Gareth can't wait for this one.
Oh, I'm creaming myself just thinking about it.
Yes, it's adapted from... We've already pimped one of the trailers already earlier. I think you pimped that in an earlier show. And if you don't know about it, it's based on a book written by Philip K. Dick, who's also been the genesis for such films as
Blade Runner
and
Matrix.
Is it the Matrix?
Well, he was a Gnostic, and the ideas in the Matrix of two worlds, one real, one not. Gnostic idea. So definitely an influence.
Oh, and Minority Report.
Minority Report comes from a short story of his.
Yes. So definitely, it's a stamp of approval. I think great possibility, and the trailer when you see it, it's like whoa, visually
stunning.
stunning.
Waking Life, the Richard Linklater movie, which is an animated exploration of dreams and consciousness, uses the same technology but times 10. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, it's definitely one to see in the cinema. I'd say just to say you've seen it in the big screen. And my second pimp is Fuzzmail, which blurs the boundary between chat and email. Essentially, what it does is you can write an email and whoever receives it will see it exactly as it was written. So the text appears across the line in real time. So they'll see every pause, every time you write something and delete it and write something else. Every time you stop, every time you start. So in some ways it's kind of more realistic, message in some ways, because I know I write my emails as a stream of consciousness, so I'll do pauses. I have to go pause. I'm now pausing and thinking. And this you can actually just go, he is thinking. Of course, it could be really long to read a message. That's the one slight downside. If they went out for a cup of tea or fell over and went to the hospital, and 2 days later, it's like, hi, I'm back from the hospital. You're like, jeez, I'm dying for a piss.
Or you could just go off and do something else.
Yeah, exactly. You could go off. It could make reading emails even slower. Because...
Yeah. Well, it could take forever.
It could take forever.
Literally,
yeah.
No, because you'd never get the email. So it's a bit of a gimme, but cool. Cool.
A little bit of a gimme. I think, but
so yeah,
something to play with.
We've been coming to you from the heart of war-torn Dublin. The Technolotics studio is on fire, which is why we're not there.
Yes.
We're now going to join the fracas, stealing and attacking the forces of law and possessions. And
yeah, do you have your crowbar?
I have my crowbar. Do you have your shotgun?
Yeah, no, I've got my rusty spoon.
Oh! Rusty spoon!
Ooh, rusty spoon! It's gonna hurt.
Feels good on my salad finger. You've been watching Technolotics.